Unaware she owns the company his parents worked for, Ethan Parker spat on his wife at the family dinner. What came next was already signed in ink he'd never seen. The red stain of his contempt slid down Amara Okafor's cheek like wine finding a fault line, and the room, loud a heartbeat ago, fell into a hush so complete even the ceiling fans seemed to stall. "Without me, you're nothing," he added, loud enough for the waiters to pretend deafness, soft enough to pass as a joke to the unbrave. Across the table, Vanessa Moore, perfect hair, perfect smile, imperfect timing, hid a smirk behind her glass, while Ethan's father lifted his to make a toast about bloodlines and builders. Amara did not flinch. She reached for the linen, pressed once, and set it beside the plate, a small white flag that refused to surrender. Outside, rain felt its way down the Lagos night, a patient storm promising a cleaner sky. "To resilience," Mr. Parker declared, "and to the men who keep families standing." Someone laughed. Ethan leaned back, victorious in the petty way of men who think echoes are applause. "You can't do this," he whispered. Not to her, but to the idea of her, the one he had built from habits and control. The waiter arrived with Merlot stamped in red wax like a verdict, hesitated at the bruise of silence, and poured anyway. A droplet broke loose as the bottle tilted, spattering the tablecloth between husband and wife, a dot the color of consequence. Amara looked at it, then at Ethan, then past him, where a portrait of the Parker grandparents presided in guilt over this ritual of small humiliations. "To resilience," she echoed, voice level, the smallest smile tucked away like a sealed envelope. Ethan's mother shifted, a warning in her eyes. Vanessa's smirk sharpened. Someone at the far end began to whisper the headline they'd deliver in the family group chat. Amara's phone buzzed once against her clutch. She did not open it. She didn't need to read the message to know its shape. Signatures aligned, clause confirmed, timing exact. Power doesn't shout, it timestamps. She folded her hands, the ring bright as a gavel sleeping. Ethan pivoted for the kill that always pleased him. "Tell them," he said, spreading his hands. "How you spend my money." Soft laughter. "Tell them," he said again, "why a man must carry a woman who brings nothing." Mr. Parker chuckled. Vanessa sipped victory. Amara watched the droplet creep into the table's weave until it became a neat circle, then another, then a slow, patient bloom. She could have told them about work weeks with no ceiling, about 5 a.m., decisions, about signatures that move ships in harbors she will never see. She could have told them about the clause no one in this room can pronounce properly, the one that ties men like Ethan to board chairs like anchors. Instead, she set down her glass and lifted her chin the way women do when they have already decided who they are. "To families," she said, turning the toast inside out, "and to those who keep them standing, seen or unseen." The chandelier flickered, the storm found its full voice. Ethan's smile returned, brittle and white. He reached for the bottle to refill his own glass first. "Apologize to your wife," someone's aunt breathed. Scandal finally outweighing fear. Ethan didn't. "Without you, I'm finally myself," Amara said softly, not to argue, but to mark the minute. She lifted the linen one last time and erased the stain from her skin, leaving the table to keep the record. And then she looked into the window, where the storm replaced her reflection with the city's lights, and made a vow the rain could hear. She would not raise her voice, she would raise the receipts. Morning arrived like a verdict, and Amara woke before the alarm. The storm rinsed from the sky, and Lagos, sharpening into glass and steel. She lay still, measuring her breath, replaying the dinner as if it belonged to another woman. The stain was gone from her cheek. The fact of it remained like a watermark. Ethan snored beside her, sleeping as men do when they believe the world resets at sunrise. He would rise to the mirror, knot a tie, and perform confidence until he passed for leadership. She slipped from bed, opened the drawer, and lifted the pen that had changed more lives than any speech. She clicked it once and set it in her clutch. Downstairs the house stirred, the cook slicing pawpaw, the gardener dragging a hose, the gate yawning for a courier. Amara chose charcoal trousers, a silk blouse, plain earrings, and stood at the balcony while the city exhaled. She dialed a number that never appeared in Ethan's records. "Confirm," she said when legal answered, and listened to clauses she knew by heart. Conduct, reputational risk, nepotism bar, disclosure duty. Her laptop glowed on the console, a constellation of dashboards, holdings nested in holdings, a port lease blinking green, a warehouse claim moving from pending to paid. The company Ethan's parents had served sat at the center, its HR arm tucked beneath the conglomerate she had acquired 2 years earlier through a quiet proxy. Acquisition was never romance for her. It was weather. You studied pressure, read the wind, chose your day. She had chosen a day. Ethan emerged crisp, whistling, kissed the air near her cheek, and said he would be late for a briefing. He did not notice her eyes refusing to be mirrors. He left with confidence on credit. After the door sighed shut, she carried her clutch to the office, carved from a linen closet. She reviewed the board agenda, then the attachments. A 1-page governance review, a 3-line resolution, a sealed envelope for the chairman. Subject: remedial compliance step. At 9 she drove herself. The third mainland slipped by, the lagoon ironed by rain. At a light, a girl in a navy uniform crossed. She looked up at Amara without flinching, as if discovering a future tense. Amara raised 2 fingers. The girl nodded, solemn as a vow. The 20th floor smelled of paper and coffee. Directors settled with the rustle of people who had sat in many rooms and pretended surprise. Reports moved, forecasts clicked by, then the chairman inclined his head. Amara set the letter on the table. "Governance review?" she said, and the room rearranged its attention. She did not mention dinner. She spoke about duty and the dignity of labor, about how institutions teach families where the lines are. The letter named no one, but its teeth were visible. Any employee who coerced, disparaged, or publicly humiliated an adult dependent or spouse of a staff member, current or former, triggered a review of associated contracts and placements. Silence drew a border around the table. The chairman signed. 2 directors initialed. An email left the building with the thud of certainty. Ethan's parents would receive an interview invitation. Vanessa would find her badge deactivated for 72 hours. Ethan would feel none of it yet, not until noon, when the first locked door refused him. Amara closed her folder. Power did not clap. It filed. She thanked the room, watched the city glitter beyond the glass. Inside the clutch, the pen rested. She had not raised her voice. She had raised the floor, and soon he would learn the difference. Ethan arrived at Atlas Tower with rain-bright shoes and a grin polished by habit, nodding to the receptionist who always mistook bravado for charm, and pressed his badge to the turnstile as if the world owed him clearance. The red light blinked twice and denied him with a muted chirp that made the guard look up. He tried again, harder, as though force could coax electricity to remember him. "Try the other lane," the guard suggested, the tone people reserve for men they've seen fall before. The second lane denied him too. A line formed discreetly behind, heads tilted toward phones, thumbs moving with the speed of impending gossip. Ethan laughed, a short bark he hoped sounded casual. "System glitch," he said, and held out his badge to the guard, who waved a handheld scanner that responded with a tone like a closed door. The receptionist called it, who did not come. Security finally keyed him through with a visitor sticker, the paper dampening the navy of his suit like a quiet insult. In the elevator, he smoothed his tie and rehearsed the briefing, deciding he would stretch his opening joke and reclaim the room with a story about power outages and Lagos resilience. On the 12th floor, the glass doors refused his badge as politely as the turnstile had. He pressed the intercom, and Blessing from HR answered with the kind of careful warmth that foretells a script. "Morning, sir. Could you stop by HR first?" 10 minutes only, he wanted to say later, to invoke his calendar like a shield. But something in the way she said "sir" without belonging to it made him step back. HR smelled of lemons and laminated policy. Blessing gestured to a chair. "There's a routine review underway," she said. sliding a document across the table with the efficiency of rain sliding off a roof. We're confirming relationships and potential conflicts tied to contract placements. It affects multiple departments. Ethan skimmed and hid his name twice, once beside Vanessa's division, once beside his parents' retiree consultancy. The language was neutral, the effect surgical. He smiled without teeth. "This is overreach," he said. Blessing kept her eyes level. "We expect it will be brief." He signed a form acknowledging notice. The pen felt heavier than it should. When he reached his floor, the glass admitted him with a receptionist's override code. Inside, screens flickered with spreadsheets and weather maps of markets he quoted at dinners. His assistant, Nikiru, rose halfway and then sat again, as if remembering gravity mid-flight. "The 11 a.m. with logistics moved to 2, she said. "And the chairman wants your talking points in writing." Ethan frowned. "Since when do we do talking points in writing?" "Since this morning," she said carefully. The room beyond his door appeared unchanged. The chair still exactly where he left it. The family photo still smiling from 6 months ago, but the email waiting in his inbox rearranged the air. Subject: interim access limitations. The words were concise, almost kind. Until the review concluded, he would not sign external memos, initiate vendor amendments, or represent the company at public fora. He skimmed the CC line and felt his heart notch. Legal, HR, chairman's office, a name he did not recognize from a holding he didn't bother to learn. He stood, paced once, then twice, like a man measuring a room that has shifted while he slept. Vanessa's message arrived next. "Can't badge in. Call me." He did not. He called his father instead, and his father answered from the echo of a hallway. "They've asked us in," the older man said, trying for a chuckle and landing on a cough. Small matter. Routine. Ethan stared at the skyline, as if it owed him a map. "This is ridiculous," he said. But the word didn't bite. When he finally phoned Vanessa, she was outside the building, hair perfect, temper polished to a blade. "They deactivated me," she hissed. "Do something." He promised he would, ended the call, and opened a fresh email to the chairman that began with "Sir" and ended with "urgency," then deleted it all at once because "Sir" felt too small. Noon arrived, and with it, a message from facilities. "Your access has been restored to shared spaces during review. Executive privileges remain paused." He walked to the glass and caught his reflection riding the city like a rumor, the visitor sticker peeled at the corners. Somewhere between the lobby and this window, a certainty had slipped. Not the job. Those could be replaced with cleverness and friends, but the presumption that rooms would always open. He tried to imagine Amara making breakfast, or calling a driver, or crying, and could not place her in any of those frames. The pen in his pocket felt suddenly theatrical, like a prop in a play he had not read. A calendar alert pulsed. Board briefing, 2 p.m. He straightened his jacket, picked up his notes, and told himself he would win the room with effortless charm, the way he always had. The elevator doors opened. He stepped inside and noticed his hands trembling, small, almost polite, as if they understood something he did not. The boardroom watched the city, glass on 3 sides, and a table wide enough to seat ambition. And Ethan entered it too, with notes he no longer trusted, and a smile that had lost its appetite. The chairman cleared his throat. The agenda moved like a metronome, and somewhere between forecasts and port delays, Ethan felt the room's gravity tilt away from him, as if the air had received instructions. He waited for his slot on logistics, rehearsing the opening line that used to land like a friendly hammer. But the chairman glanced past him to the governance council, who stood with a folder the color of wet slate. "A brief note before we continue," counsel said, voice unhurried, and laid out a summary, like weather, an internal review, temporary limitations, no prejudgment, a reminder that conduct outside the office is not invisible. Ethan arranged his face into patient agreement. He was invited to present. He stood, spoke, and discovered that his jokes arrived late, and his numbers, once obedient, seemed to question the hand that held them. A director asked for sources. Another asked for stress tests. The chairman asked for the procurement watermark on a graph he had pulled from a vendor deck. He answered too quickly, and the room developed tiny silences that behave like cracks. He ended with a promise to circulate a more conservative plan by Friday. Applause did not visit. The chairman thanked him and turned to any other business, which always hid the real business. Counsel nodded to a sealed envelope at the head of the table. "We have a remedial compliance step recommendation," he said, sliding a one-page resolution to each director. The language was clean. To prevent favoritism, external relationships affecting internal placements would be paused pending confirmation. Vanessa's division would report to another VP ad interim. Retiree consultancy contracts would be reviewed by outside auditors. Interference would trigger escalation. "Is this targeted at me?" Ethan asked, lighter than he felt. "This is targeted at integrity," the chairman replied. The vote took less than a minute. Pens tapped. Initials bloomed. A soft footfall turned the door into a threshold, and Amara stepped in without hurry. A late edition listed as External Stakeholder Briefing. She wore a charcoal suit and a stillness that made the room correct its posture. His heart lifted in reflex and then stalled on the memory of red wine and a linen napkin. She thanked the board, set a slim folder on the table, and spoke with the calm of someone who has outlived thunder. Her update covered port automation pilots, warehousing audits, and an education initiative for staff families. She referenced figures he had never seen and entities he had never mapped. Questions came about timing. She answered with dates that matched the calendar. When she finished, the chairman asked if there was anything further. "Only this," she said. "The dignity of labor is the first asset on any balance sheet." It was not a rebuke and not a plea. She collected her folder and turned. Her reflection crossed Ethan's in the glass for half a second, two shapes sharing a window and not a world. He lowered his gaze and found his own signature where it did not belong, an old authorization stamped, proof that once he had trusted a process he did not understand. The meeting adjourned. Outside, the hallway smelled of ink. He stepped into it and felt the building was not a ladder, but a test he had been taking without reading instructions, graded by a quiet hand that did not shout, only endure. By evening, the city had slipped back into heat and traffic. The day's rain stored in gutters. Ethan drove without music toward his parents' bungalow, because fury wants witnesses. He found his father in the sitting room with a tie on, though no work waited, his mother smoothing a newspaper, and beside the tea tray lay 2 company envelopes addressed by hand. "Routine," his father said too quickly, lifting his chin like a man holding a roof, but his mother's fingers paused on the flap as if paper might bruise. Ethan scanned questions about mentorships, consultancy conflicts, and boundaries, and felt his stomach sour at the polite precision. "They think we leaned on you," his father murmured. "They think the walls should stand without hands," his mother answered. His phone lit with messages from Vanessa and a photo of her outside Atlas Tower, like a headline that won't run. He typed, "Call you later," and did not send it. On the drive home, he rehearsed apologies the way a man tries doors, then discarded each because none carried the weight of the stain he had made public. The house greeted him with quiet. The staff moved quietly. Amara was in the small office she had carved from a closet, light pooling on her hands as she reviewed a list labeled Scholarships, Staff Families, with notes about schools that accepted transfers midterm. He watched from the doorway, guilt arriving not as thunder, but as an instruction he had ignored. "HR is eating me alive," he began, aiming for humor and landing on a plea. She clicked her pen closed and turned, steady. "No one is eating you," she said. "An institution is teaching you that people aren't props. You set this in motion." "I set a boundary," she said. "You broke one on purpose. Tell them to stop." "I don't tell them," she replied. "I tell the truth, and the process owns itself." He laughed, and the sound embarrassed him. "You've been planning something." "I've been planning protection," she said. "For the people your performance made small. For me." He saw the clutch and the pen inside it, and remembered signatures he'd never earned. "I was angry," he said, hearing the thinness of the excuse. "You were cruel," she said, "and you were public." Silence gathered like a witness. She slid a single sheet across the desk. Separate residences within 30 days, interim counseling for any public reconciliation, privacy clause enforcement, and a note about his parents' interviews scheduled. Transport provided, no assumptions of fault. "I don't want a divorce," he said. "Then don't," she answered. "But don't ask me to live at the level of your apology." From the kitchen came the clink of plates, the metronome of a life that would continue. "Is this about money?" he asked. "Respect is cheaper," she said. It was always the first bill. She stood, and the room seemed to shift along a hinge he hadn't noticed. "Tomorrow I'll move to the apartment in Ikoyi," she added. "You can keep the house for now." Something inside him reached for outrage, found only the hollow where certainty used to live. "Will you tell them who you are?" he asked. "I already did," she said. Then he saw the list, the names of drivers and cleaners and clerks, the ledger of her care. She passed him in the doorway, leaving him in a house that had learned to hold its breath, and he knew the night would end without a rescue, only a calendar, a clause, and the unarguable gravity of consequence that would not move for him. The morning she moved out, Amara left the keys on the foyer table beside a bowl of limes and a note that read, "There are rules to dignifying love." She took a suitcase, the pen, and nothing that would make the house remember her loudly. Ethan watched from the landing with a mouth full of sentences that died before they reached air. He tried work. Work gave him corridors that ended at doors with codes he no longer owned. He tried calling Vanessa. Vanessa answered once to say she was pursuing other opportunities. In the quiet that followed, he visited his parents and found his mother in her best dress, sitting straight for the interview like a student called to the front of class. Auditors asked neutral questions. She answered with dates and the names of colleagues she admired. His father explained mentorship as if it were a clean word. They came home relieved, grateful for rides arranged and stipends offered, their dignity returned by process rather than favor. Ethan felt both gratitude and shame, twins that argued in his chest. At Atlas Tower, the governance memo landed. Scholarships approved for 32 families, warehouse audits cleared, with quiet corrections, and a pilot daycare for shift workers' children. News of his outburst never reached the blogs, yet the consequences traveled. Bleeding certainty, Ethan finally drove to Ikoyi with a paper bag of oranges and the apology he had rehearsed so long it sounded almost true. Amara opened the door partway. Behind her, the apartment was spare and exact. He stood in the hall like a candidate. "I can't repair what I did with a speech," he said. "But I can learn the rules you live by." She considered him, eyes steady. "Start where you ended," she said. "Respect. In public." 2 days later, the company hosted a staff forum, a small stage and plastic chairs. Amara spoke about scholarships and skills labs. A janitor's daughter promised to bring her mother's name to graduation. Ethan sat in the back, hands folded to keep them from performing. When the applause thinned, he walked to the front with a humility that felt like work. He asked for the microphone and received it as if it might measure him. "My name is Ethan Parker," he said. "I harmed my wife publicly. I disrespected the labor this company means to honor. No policy asked me to say this. I'm saying it because dignity is the floor and I stepped through it. I intend to build it back." A murmur rolled the room. Not pity, not praise recognition, perhaps, of a weight finally acknowledged. He returned the mic and did not reach for Amara's hand. But when the forum ended, she stopped beside him at the exit. "Begin with the small things," she said. "They are the whole architecture." Time walked. He moved into a smaller office and learned to annotate his confidence. He visited his parents without giving advice and paid attention to names stitched on uniforms. Amara kept the apartment and the pen, and when she signed scholarship certificates that year, Her signature looked less like a weapon and more like a bridge. They did not divorce that season. They did not return to what they were. On a humid evening months later, after a ceremony where 3 mothers cried, Ethan walked home along the lagoon and understood that power had never been the noise he made. It was the quiet she mastered. He texted, "Thank you for teaching me the floor." The dots appeared, then disappeared, then returned. Her reply arrived like weather. "Keep standing, the rest follows." He breathed. And for once the city did not argue back today.